Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Clerk Jones, if you would call
The meeting
April 25th, 2020.
Here.
Councilor Wright,
Yeah.
Councilor Zede,
Here.
Councilor Cameron,
Present.
Councilor Donahue,
Present.
Councilor Khan,
Present.
Councilor Lane.
Here.
Thank you. Councilor McCauley,
Here.
Councilor Preston,
Here.
Councilor Vogel,
Present.
and Councilor Shan.
Present.
We have unanimous split opinion on presence and here.
Late files.
Well, we have more than a few. Don't blame the clerk. Okay, Order 345, which is the intermunicipal agreement between Salisbury and Newburyport on the North Jetty dredging project. We have appointment 317 with Lynn Chow at 75 High Street to the ZBA until 5/15/2023. 318 is Paul Hogg. It's a reappointment, 4 Colton Drive, Harbor Master Special Police Officer, till 5/1/2025. We have an emergency preamble on Communication 409, which is the compilation of suggestions by the council to DHCD. We have 3 orders on the Brown School. Those are orders in succession, beginning with 340.
6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, and 8, thank you. And then we have a communication coming out of the Education Committee, Order 343, on the Statement of Interest.
Motion to waive the rules and accept the late files.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede. Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, public comment. Those online who would like to raise their hand and speak on an item on our agenda, please do so now. I don't see any hands raised, so we'll keep the public comment to just those in the council chambers. All right, so first on the list is Jeff Trail. Please state your name, address, and 2 minutes.
I'm Jeff Trail, I live at 27 Jefferson Street. I'm a direct abutter to the Coffin Street private way. This was declared a private way on December 1st, 2021 by Reigning Law Office, who was hired by this council. I'm opposed to any taking of this land or our rights. It would not be safe for pedestrians if a connection was made to the paved portion of the private way due to the vehicle use on the paved portion. Please use your easement on the Merrimack Street side to build a sidewalk between Coffin and Jefferson Street instead for pedestrian access between the 2 streets. Thank you.
James Meinhardt.
James Meinhardt, 27.5 Jefferson Street. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council. I rise in any opposition, in complete opposition to any motion involving taking of any of the private way that runs between Coffin Street and Jefferson. We would be severely impacted by any change. I invite any of you to come by and view the situation. And as was said previously by the previous speaker, there was an opinion already issued, and I don't see any grounds that it should be altered. Thank you very much.
Carol Meinhardt.
Thank you. I'm Carol Meinhardt, 27.5 Jefferson Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. I echo what Jeff and my husband said. One point you may not recognize is that my house might be unique in that our area of egress is only accessible by the private way. I have no other way of getting into my house, and I cannot tell you what that means, to have a fear of me actually being able to get into your house. So I am expressing my complete opposition and my complete commitment financially and legally to do what's necessary to preserve my property rights and the rights in my private way. And like my husband said, you're welcome to come by and see this situation. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Charlie Contar.
Thank you. Charlie Tonta, 29 Jefferson Street. It's a true pleasure to be back before this august body, but I have to be honest, it is also going to be a true pleasure after my remarks to go home and watch the Celtics. So if any of you want me to text you the results, I'll tell you. I'm also a direct abutter of this way, which for 149 years has been a paper street. For 22 years, my wife and I have been presenting evidence to City Hall that it is a private property as a paper street, that we have fee rights to the center of it, which are private property rights, and that it has never been appropriately accepted as a public way. That has never happened, right? The Ward 5 Council was kind enough to give me a heads up last week that he contacted KP Law, and they offered 3 options that he reviewed. He didn't tell me you're going to go into executive session and talk about the value or purchase or lease of my property, but he did say that he had talked to KP. They offered 3 options. One option is that you just do nothing. If you just do nothing, as you've heard, it's private property, and it will remain private property. The second option, which I think presented sort of as a compromise, but I do not view it as a compromise, and that would be to put a gravel path in from Coffin Street basically to my driveway. And that is, quite frankly, one of the nuttiest ideas I've ever heard. I mean, you all know that we cannot put a crosswalk that dead ends into a driveway, right? We're not allowed to do that. All right, and the suggestion would be to put a gravel path that dead ends into where my garage is and where my neighbors park their cars and get egress and to their car. It doesn't make any sense. So we reject that. All right, the final one is that through eminent domain you take the property, and by first with a 2/3 vote that you would accept it as a public way. Accepting means that you accept the responsibility of maintaining the street. All right, all over town, there are efforts to accept the street, and people would like to accept it, but they're not. So I am inalterably opposed, all right, and I will use all my resources, right, legal resources, financial resources,
Thank you, Mr. Tontar.
and political resources to oppose this.
Thank you, Mr.
You're on
Tontar.
notice. Thank you. I'm out of here.
Mary Sortel.
Hello, my name is Mary Sorto. I'm at 8 Coffin Street in Newburyport, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I am also very much opposed to the motion to put a public pathway through Coffin Street. It's not only has it been determined to be a private way, it will be very, very invasive to all of the abutters. It's right next to my property, and as the others have said, it's very close to the entrance of their homes. It's very, very invasive. And I, again, would encourage you to come and actually see it. I mean, there are legal issues, I'm sure, but if you come and see it, the intuition is it's really hard to imagine that there is even a reason for a public way in that area. So, again, I'm very much opposed to this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sortel. And that is it for public comment. So, the mayor's comment. Are you representing the mayor?
I'll just say that Mayor Reardon is sick this evening and won't be joining us. The mayor's update was presented as a late file. If you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to take them, but I don't want to usurp the mayor's time.
Okay, thank you.
There.
All right. Consent agenda. Clerk Jones.
The consent agenda this evening consists of the following. Approval of the April 11th minutes. There are 3 communications. Application 72, block party, YHC, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., Yankee Homecoming, on Temple Street between Federal and Lime. That's to go to public safety. Application 73 is a event in Olive's backyard, the so-called Artisans Market. That would be July 16th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., 341 High Street. Again, to go to public safety. Communication 408 is the Retirement Board COLA meeting. There's an amendment on the time and date. That's to be received and filed. No transfers. The following appointments. Appointment 313, Joe Copper, 8 Fruit Street, to the Cultural Council until 4/29/2025. Appointment 314, Daniel A. Simon, 11 Jackson Street, Water Sewer Commission, 4/30/2024, to go to Public Utilities. Appointment 315, Chris Charos, 10 82nd Street, Harbor Commission, 5/1/2025, Planning and Development. Reappointment 316, Stephen Moore, 10 North Atkinson Street, to the Conservation Commission until 5/1/2025, Planning and Development. Following items are removed from their respective committees with the vote on consent to approve. The consent agenda. Budget and Finance, Order 334, Transfer 123, Communication 403, Order 342. General Government, Communication 404, Neighborhood and City Services, Ordinance 102, Planning and Development, Communication 382, Appointment 305, Public Safety, Applications 68, 69, and 70, and Order 339. And that is the consent agenda this evening.
Councilor McCauley.
Council President, I'd like to take appointment 315. I don't want it removed. I would just like to change from PD to public safety.
Second.
Yeah,
Yes, appointment 315.
yeah, I think you can just agree. If I might, I think it's a unilateral, you can either remove or make a suggested change.
Okay.
The President agrees, it's done, I think.
So we're all set? Or do I need to take it out?
President, I just changed it from PD to PS.
Okay. You good with that? All right. So with that amendment, roll call.
And that was Council Z, seconded by,
That was me.
thank you.
Seconded. No, this is the motion to approve. as
So, yeah, I
amended.
don't think the motion was amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you,
Second.
thank you. Roll call. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron? Yes. Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. On to the regular agenda. I believe there is a presentation that is going to be made by one second, let me share it.
Great. Good evening, councilors. Nice to see you all again. We are extremely excited to present tonight this facilities master plan, which is the culmination of the last 2.5 months of work by the mayor's office, working together with department heads, the finance director, and many folks who maintain and take care of many of the city's assets. Next slide, please. So what is the facilities master plan? This is a list of all the city's assets, meaning all of our facilities, our land, and the equipment that the city owns. We also have columns that list what the annual maintenance is done on each one of these assets, what their anticipated needs are, and what improvements or replacements are going to be anticipated to be needed. Along with that, we've also included a projected fiscal year where those replacements or improvements might need to be made, and where we have them right now, estimated cost for each item. This is a very holistic snapshot of everything that the city owns, from school and city facilities, all of our vehicles and equipment, vacant land, parks and open space, and other city-owned properties such as docks and boats and such. Next slide, please. So this plan is a colossal Excel sheet at the moment. We have a number of tabs on that Excel sheet. The very first tab, we're calling it the Facilities Master Plan. And in brief, what that is again, a listing of all the projects in the Capital Improvement Plan, or the CIP, as well as projects that are further out than 5 years that are snapshotted on that CIP, and other assets that may not have any need at the moment, but at least they're in a sheet as an asset that is owned by the city. They may not have an identified need at this time. The projects where we have them include a cost estimate and, again, a priority year as to when the work would need to be done. The second tab in the Excel sheet is the Vehicles and Equipment tab, and again, this is a comprehensive list of every car, truck, trailer, mower, backhoe, piece of equipment that the city owns, and which department takes ownership of that piece of equipment. It also identifies its age and the anticipated year that it will need to be replaced. The third tab is a list of what we're calling orphaned properties, and these are parcels of land primarily that don't have a department associated with them, which means that no department is currently maintaining that piece of land. It also includes properties that are very large and might be owned by a singular department, but might have space to share perhaps another use on the same parcel. There are other tabs which we are working through at the moment, and those include opportunities for funding. So, for example, there's a tab of potential ARPA candidates, state and federal earmarks and such that would hopefully give us some identification as to how some of these projects will be funded. Next slide, please. This is just a very brief snapshot of tab 1, which is what we're calling the Facilities Master Plan, the first tab in the Excel sheet. And I won't go into great detail, but it gives you an idea of what you'll see in the plan. So it will have which department, the department head of that department who takes ownership of the asset, and then a listing of what types of maintenance happen on that parcel or that piece of equipment on an annual basis and what the anticipated needs are. The second to the last column is the priority year. So, for example, we're in 2022, so number 1 would be identified on the CIP as fiscal year 23 and so on. So this will be a living document that will continuously update as projects get completed and new projects pop on. Next slide, please. This is tab number 2, which is the orphaned properties that I mentioned before. So these are parcels of land that may or may not have particular ownership by a specific department. Some of them are very, very tiny slivers of property. For example, there's quite a few along the Clipper City Rail Trail, and there's a number on Plum Island that are very small, but they are owned by the city, so they should be captured someplace. There are also extremely large properties. There's one on here that's over 100 acres that is CR land, so conservation restricted land, that might have an opportunity, for example, to have some sort of renewable energy opportunity. So we're just sort of trying to get a comprehensive snapshot of properties and what their uses may or may not be. Next slide, please. And the third snapshot I wanted to show you tonight is the vehicles and equipment. So this is a very lengthy tab that shows, again, every piece of equipment that is owned and which department owns it. Gives a description of what it is, its age, so the year that it is, and then what the anticipated replacement year might be. Next slide, please. So the question that we receive a lot is, how is this different from the CIP? So while this does include every line item from the CIP. It is a much larger document than that, and it includes many, many more items than the CIP has. It's a full universe of projects, needs, and assets of the city. This plan extends longer than 5 years, so while the CIP gives us a snapshot of what we need for funding and projects over the next 5 years, this includes a vast and more lengthy list of projects beyond the 5 years. It's a comprehensive look at what the city owns and what the city needs, and it has been cross-referenced between the department heads, the city insurance policies, assessor databases, and the employees that do maintain the equipment and properties. Next slide, please. How will it be used? We really see this as a way to strategize our priorities for the city, for staffing and work planning. It can help us navigate pathways towards funding, identify which grants should be prioritized higher than others, where we might have requests for earmarks, and where the other dollars might come from city budget allocations. It'll also help us better utilize our vehicles and equipment. For example, one department may not have a use for a more aged piece of equipment that another department could potentially use instead of trading it in. So that's just an example of how some of these line items might be useful to us. Next slide, please. The next steps. So there is still a little bit of work to be done on this. While we do have the full universe of these projects, we need to really take a harder look at how to prioritize them so that we can schedule, design, and estimate budgets moving forward. There are some cost estimates on here that do need a little bit of a harder look, need some finishing and updating. And then there are a couple of items on here, for example, in the planning, which you'll see in the CIP, complete streets and traffic calming are listed as categories of projects that do show up in the CIP. And we really do need to identify and prioritize the individual projects within these categories. So these are some additional steps and work that we'll be doing over the coming months. And I believe that might be the final slide.
That's it.
Is it? Great. Any questions?
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Just a quick question. Do you anticipate this being like the main database and then the CIP being a subset of that, rolling, let's say, every year? You'll probably take your CIP information from this database and then move that forward?
Yes, I can see it working in both directions.
Yeah,
So both will be, this will definitely be a living document that will be updated on an annual basis. I do see it as informing what should be on the CIP as the years move on. And it's also an opportunity to better understand from the departments exactly what it is that they need and get that on a document that's useful for the city.
Thank you.
Councilor Donahue and then Councilor Khan.
Thank you, President. Yes, I just have a quick question. On the tab that has all the vehicles and equipment, is there a section for cost, either of what we originally paid for a piece in its age, and also or an anticipated cost to replace it?
Sure, that's a great question.
If I could remind the counselors to make sure you're not muted, that would be great. Thank
Am I
you.
muted?
I promise we will meet you downstairs.
Oh, boo, I'm sorry. Oh.
Okay, so I think the question was, is there a value associated with the vehicles and equipment and
Yeah, do
an
we
anticipated
know those
value?
numbers?
Right, so the value is not on this plan, but it is in the city's insurance policy. So it's easy to find, the value of the individual parcel if you look at the MIA.
Okay.
And in terms of anticipating the cost of new equipment, I don't have that on this list at the moment.
Okay, I just wanted to double check that I didn't miss it because I can't see it. So. I know you're going through it all, but I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. That's fine.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank
Donahue.
you.
Councilor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Thank you very much. This is very exciting, and I'm really, I think there's going to be so much good information here. I hope it's going to be pivot table friendly, which would be awesome to do reports built on it. Two questions. One is accessibility. So do you envision this to be something that's publicly accessible, that will reside on the city's website? And then the second question is, will the vehicles and equipment include school vehicles, or is that a separate
The
piece.
school vehicles are included on this list. So all the school property and equipment, it has been cross-referenced and it does exist on this Excel sheet. I do believe we will have, I'm looking to Andrew right now, some version of this accessible to, we haven't quite gotten that far yet, but I imagine there will be some version of this that will be accessible to City Council and to the public as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so moving right along, so mayor's update. Roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Z. Yes. Councilor Cameron. Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel and Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, first reading appointments.
We have a first reading of appointment 317, Lynn Chow, 75 High Street, to the Zoning Board of Appeals until 5/15/2023. And I do think, if I might add, it's supposed to be going to Planning and Development.
Motion to refer 317 to planning and collectively 318 to public safety.
Second?
Roll call.
This is collectively on 317 and 318, Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along.
We have Communication 409, which is the late file from the council to DHCD, and there's an accompanying emergency preamble.
Motion collectively to approve 409 EP and 409.
Second?
Discussion.
So we had a special meeting last Thursday, and seemed like we collected some sort of collective feedback, and it seemed like it might be a nice idea to send DHCD a letter on behalf of the council, as suggested by Councilor Khan. So I did draft this. Councilor Khan provided these red lines, which were all totally fine with me, and I thought good clarifications. So I'll just walk you down the bullets real quick, because I know it came in late in case you didn't have a chance to read it, but hopefully these will ring a bell as essentially the main point. So bullet 1 was an acknowledgement of the goals and an appreciation for them in terms of driving housing production. Number 2 was offering concern about potentially losing grant funding and explaining that, for example, we were able to leverage Mass Works funds to replace our lift station, which in turn enabled more development. So maybe pointing out some irony there that it might be difficult to develop if we're not able to access those grant funds. Number 3 was to express concern about potential penalties, which seemed to be new. Director Port mentioned that in addition to maybe not being able to access grants, they were actually talking about assessing penalties against the city, so expressing concern about that. The next bullet point was Councilor Cameron's point about the proximity of the station to the town line and the radius, and how a good chunk of that, if you drew that circle as we saw on the map, that a large portion of it fell in a different community. And to sort of make that point further, I did attach the slide from Director Port's, because it seemed to tell the story on its own. The next bullet point was expressing the sort of neighborhood considerations, I'll just call it that. That came up as a theme several times. And then finally was just explaining some of the challenges with allowing multifamily by right, and what that really means when a local community does that. And then finally, in closing, just basically thank you. And then I didn't want to be presumptuous. I didn't write anybody's name at the bottom, but I put 11 lines on there. And if we so choose, then we could all sign it. And finally, it just needs an emergency, because according to Director Port, 5.2 is the progress, and he thought that this would make sense to go with that. We won't meet again. That's what creates the exigency, and that's the emergency preamble. Hopefully that helps summarize. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion.
I think there was a motion to approve on the floor, first and second.
All right. Without further discussion, all those in favor, roll call.
On the motion to approve both 409 emergency preamble and 409 the order itself, communication itself. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel? Yes. Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Zede and Counselor Khan, for getting that done this weekend. Appreciate it. Transfers,
We have none.
second reading appointments.
We have 5. First appointment is 308. It's Marcy Neville, 16 Marron Road, to the Council on Aging until 4/29/2027. Would you like me to read all of them? The idea of a collective motion?
So moved. Motion to approve collectively through 308, 9, 10, 11, and 12 on second reading.
Second?
Okay, maybe for the record, I should mention them. And appointment 309 is Jeanette Isabella, 100 Water Street, Emma Andrews, 4/29/2023. 310 is Rebecca Regnet, 25 Barton Street, Trust Fund Commission, 4/15/2025. Nicole Whalen, 12 Lafayette Street, to the Parks Commission, 4/29/2027. George Arena, 19 Essex Street, Cultural Council, 4/29/2025. So the motion on the floor is collectively for those 5 appointments, first and seconded.
Roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes. Orders.
First order is the Order 344. It's the Harbor Master Truck Appropriation.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next.
Next would be late file Order 345, which is the intermunicipal agreement between Salisbury and Newburyport on the North Jetty dredging project.
Motion to refer to,
General government.
Public safety?
okay.
Public safety.
So, well, do we have a second on that? I just talked to
I'll
it.
second.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very mixed. My first thought was budget, just because we had the money that went with it, but Harbor Master does fall under public safety, so it's, I hear some hmms. I don't have a super strong feeling. Budget has plenty of work, so we're not exactly hard up for more agenda items, but I could support either way, or maybe somebody even has another idea. I don't know.
General government. We do agreements. Councilman McCauley.
I had the same kind of logic here, is that I'd be glad if somebody else wanted to look at it from a municipal agreement standpoint, but, it does fall under the harbor master.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yep.
Plenty in general government, so. Okay, so motion on the floor to move to public safety.
Yes.
All right, roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Done.
Where are we now?
Ordinances.
This is a second reading, ordinance 109. I'm sorry. We have the late file
345.
That's fine.
orders 346, 347, and 348.
Motion to collectively refer to Budget and Finance.
Second?
345?
346, 7, and 8.
I'm asking if we did 345. I thought we, or did I?
345 was the, yes,
Oh, that's
we
the
did.
one that's going to public safety? Yes. Okay, sorry.
And Committee of the Whole. Yep.
Discussion.
Sorry.
I think I was a second, I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
So I'm moving 346, 347, 348 to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're at Ordinance 109, which is a second reading. It's the amendment to the sidewalks, specifying sidewalk material.
Motion to approve on second reading?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
No.
Councilor Vogel. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
That would be 9-2. Ordinance passes second reading.
So not to move too quickly, did we need to deal with appointment 318, Paul Hogg? Did we move that out already?
Oh, yeah, he's
Absolutely right.
Is that a collective one? Okay.
was that in cons-
I thought he went to public safety.
Okay, just making sure. We got a stack. All right, so committee items. Nothing in economic development, nothing in market landing part. Councilor Zede, Budget and Finance.
Yes, thank you, President. I think we're going to start with Order 334, which is the seawall, and I'm going to recuse, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, and Councilor Khan, I think, will deliver the committee report, and I shall be back when summoned.
Okay.
Am I recognized? Should I get up?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Council President. This actually went through 2 budget and finance meetings. The first one was really a lot of questions we had in terms of, in terms of priority of the ARPA funds. And, I just came to point, the Joppa Park sidewalk project, not really fully understanding some of the context and history, especially since the ARPA committee, it's not something that's easy to find minutes or notes. So I think the first meeting was to kind of identify our questions to better understand this project for its funding. The second meeting that we had more recently was very insightful. We had Lisa Reed from the Parks Department come and explain some of the context, the history, and as well as go into the nuances of kind of the existing, there's a partial portion already in brick, and the complexities involved in kind of securing that to this ongoing kind of wave action from, not wave, but water action from the river, creating these sinkholes. And so they really applied a technology to layer it in a way that it's not going to erode very quickly. And now it's mainly focusing on completing the rest of the portion. I think what appeased me, because I was probably the one that was most resistant initially, I keep thinking Hale Street sidewalk. So in my perception, I always kept thinking, really, is this a priority when we know there's other needs in the city? So I feel like the thing that was the most compelling in supporting this was around understanding that it is shovel-ready. It kind of fits the way ARPA funds could be used. And it definitely, I will defer if anyone has questions for Lisa Reed here, but it's a public safety issue primarily. And I will say, walking out there, and actually Councilor Donahue and I walked before the meeting out there, which was a nice walk before a meeting. But it was, there are clearly a lot of divots. It's been patched so much because of the erosion that's being pulled from the support underneath of the soil that there's actually holes that you could go down and almost see the water through. So it's in such disrepair that I do think that this will be a very effective use of the funds. Again, I say public safety is primary over there, especially how frequently it's used. So that's kind of, I would say, out of committee. Councilor, the chair had to recuse himself. So out of committee, it did come 2 in favor for supporting this. And I will defer now for my fellow committee member if they wanted to add anything more here. Thank you.
Is there a motion on the floor? Did I miss it?
Aye. Wait, isn't this already?
It's out, but we have to move to approve.
I guess I was so excited to get recognized. Okay. Thank you. Let me repeat myself.
No, he's done.
Thanks. Councilor Wright, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so
The public safety issues are prevalent. I think it's an opportunity to finish what was done at the landing part and move that all the way to the new rail trail area and bring that all into a nice completion. It will complete the project. It's interesting. I'd just like to say on the record that we're spending ARPA money on fixing water-related issues on the river, and there are other water-related issues in the city.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. So noted. Councilor Vogel, and then I note Councilor Donahue. So, Councilor Vogel.
Thank you very much. If I may, through the President, with my name on here as a sponsor, certainly those concerns of the public safety and keeping the area repaired and so forth. Also, it is a wonderful place to walk. In terms of the process that we went through with the ARPA funds, there was a lot of discussion in these meetings about how to divvy up this basically $5 million. And really, as it turned out, the cost of doing this relatively small to compare to what else we're going to be using that money for.
Just a reminder to unmute or not mute.
I am unmuted. For no one. Huh? Oh. All right, let me start over again.
No, it's okay.
Oh, come on.
They knew what you were saying.
Yeah, nothing.
All right.
So in any event, my point being is that in divvying up the ARPA funds, and yes, indeed, there are plenty of other projects around the city to be that need to be undertaken. In this particular case, using this money in this manner, it was just a sort of a little bit of money left over. It seemed to be the perfect fit, and I would encourage everyone. I think that this is a great project for that amount of money compared to where else we're doing with the ARPA money.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, can I ask a question of Parks Director Reed?
Certainly.
Okay, hi. Thank you. Can you tell me, because I did not get to attend the meetings that discussed this project and some of the details. First, can you tell me what type of bricks are we planning to use to finish this?
We're using the same pavers that are required for sidewalks downtown.
Okay, is that the wire cut? Is that what we have required? Do you know?
I don't know that spec offhand, but we took it from the city's sidewalk specification and worked with John Eric White, the city's senior engineer.
And do we know who did the work on the existing brick sidewalk that's there?
Yes, they were. We hired 2 men as temporary staff. They are no longer available. And part of the reason we're going this route, hiring a contractor to do the whole job, is that we haven't been successful in finding temporary staff since then. We haven't been able to find anybody else who could do the job, who was willing to do the job.
Okay, okay. And I thought I recalled some contribution from the Moral Foundation towards some of this project at some point. Is that accurate?
Yes,
they put in some for the sidewalk.
That is accurate, and we have just over $57,000 left toward the project. I can actually be more accurate. So our current estimate is $158,655 to complete the walkway, and the Mayor Gaydon W. Morrill Charitable Foundation, we have a balance of $57,438. So the funding needed is $101,217.
Okay. So the 100,000 we're asking isn't the actual total of the project. That's just a portion.
Right.
Okay. And then lastly, I'm sorry. I just had it and then it slipped away. Yeah, it must not have been that important, I guess. All right, thank you. That's fine.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. While you're here, I'll ask, it's not just to you, but to the opera board members as well. So my understanding now is the dollar amount is to finish the remaining portion, not redo the whole thing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the second part of that is, have we talked about the work specifications needed to not have it crumble like in 3 to 5 years or something like that? Is there something special in the specifications that we're asking or putting into this requirement that we hope will mitigate this, the crazy pull of the ocean and all that?
Absolutely. So the sinkholes are created by the tide coming in under the riprap that supports the seawall. There are voids in the riprap. So the water pulls the subsurface out through those voids, and eventually enough of that subsurface goes out, and there's no longer anything to support the asphalt walkway. So that creates a sinkhole. So what we did in the first section was to excavate all the way down to the riprap. We took out the sidewalk, excavated all subsurfacing all the way down to the riprap, fill the voids in the riprap with concrete, and then we overlay it with geotextile, with an environmental textile, and then backfill over that. And so we worked with the city engineer on this, who assures us that this should last at least 40 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Council President.
All right. Any other questions?
Oh, I just remembered my last thought, what it was. It's not terribly important, but how much of a stretch of sidewalk are we talking here, feet-wise?
I know, and the number just flew out of my mind, but I believe it's 600 linear feet.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, the motion on the floor is to approve, so roll call.
Motion to approve Order 334. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede is recused. Thank you. Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
No.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
By a vote of 9 yes, 1 no, and 1 recused. Motion passes.
And Councilor Zede is back.
Thank you. Motion to approve Order 342, which is a supplementary CPC Bartlett Mall Historic Walkway, 51,000.
Second.
Thank you. So this was the second we recently did a CPC application out of band. This is another one here. This was also presented by the Parks Department. Just to fill you in on a little bit of background, a couple of years ago, money was requested from the CPC for this same project. 126K was asked for in the last iteration, it's about 3-4 years ago. 83K was approved at that time. To date, those monies have not been expended. At the time, the pandemic sort of hit, and there was a pullback on capital projects. So the project did not move forward at the time, although the funds were appropriated at that time and continue to be available today. Two things now. So one is rising costs have obviously played a role in requesting additional funds, in addition to not having the bandwidth to complete the work in-house. And so this secondary request was made to the CPC, and it was approved by them. The amount is $51,000, so 83 from the past plus 51 comes to our total lowest best bid, which was 126K. The reason that this is sort of coming out of band and is a little bit more exigent in terms of time is the bid did go out, it came back, and we're kind of trying to hang on to this price. There is a contractor that's ready to be able to do it. So that's kind of the history and the funding. In terms of what the project actually is, we're talking about the walkway at the Bartlett Mall, and specifically the portion of the walkway that goes from Greenleaf to High Street. So if you think about the Bartlett sort of having 4 sides, it's that one side that we're talking about, not any of the other sides. And it is the upper walkway, the top, not the lower one around the pond. And so the goal here is to replace an aged and sort of defunct sidewalk there. Currently, the sidewalk is there in asphalt. We did spend a considerable amount of time in committee talking about the material and the width of this. Part of the reason is that this is proposed to be done in, I guess the retail name is Flexi-Pave, but it's basically a flexible porous material, meaning water can go through this, and to widen it. So there are 2 stretches adding up to a total of 571 linear feet. 413 feet basically takes you from Greenleaf to the CVS, and then the remainder takes you from CVS to High. The first part, the 413, would be finished at 7.5 feet wide, which is wider than a traditional sidewalk, and then the rest of it would be at 9 feet. So we did talk about the material, which is expected to have a lifespan of roughly 15 to 20 years. It does have a warranty of 10 years. We are not pioneering the material here in the Northeast, which was a question that came up. It has been used here in New England. Director Reed mentioned they've used it at Fresh Pond and other materials, so it does have a track record. And then finally, the committee did spend some time on, the cost relative to the length. It is acknowledged to be a higher cost project at $126,000 for 570 linear feet, in large part because of the materials being used. We also asked, does this sort of imply that we would then plan on carrying this flexible pavement around the rest, which is still waiting? The answer was yes, so that took some additional conversation. In the end, the committee did vote 3-0 to recommend approval to the council here. And then finally, this material is ADA compliant, as I would imagine that question would come up. And the project is ready to go based on that contractor, so if approved, would move forward. Thank you.
Further questions? Councilor Wallace and Councilor Preston.
Sure, just a question for maybe Director Reed. So is this a porous pavement? Is that?
Yes, it's a flexible porous pavement.
Okay. And
so water infiltrates through. It actually can purify the water as it goes through.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with this. And it's kind of, in the Northeast, some people like it, some people don't, because of the maintenance required. Over time, it can fill with particulates, sand, debris, whatever. So there is a maintenance component involved. Is that something that was, I guess my question is, will this walkway be sanded, salted, that type of thing?
It will have ice melt put on it, as do all our sidewalks. And I mean, everything takes maintenance, but it was determined by our department that this would require less maintenance than the other surfaces that we were considering for the Bartlett Mount.
Okay. And my only other question is, was this run by the engineering department at all? And if not, maybe that would be something just to condition in there, just because they would have the insight into stormwater and what the typical...
Yeah, we have not consulted with the
It would be just a suggestion of mine.
Thank you. Councilor Preston.
Yeah, I just had a really quick question. We're talking about not the perimeter. We're talking about at the top of the walls, so to speak, closest to the pond, not close. You mentioned CVS, so not.
So we are talking.
Perimeter sidewalk.
We're talking about the walkway that runs from Greenleaf Street to High Street along Pond Street, so it is very close to CVS. It's that walkway that actually connects with the crosswalk that goes across to CVS.
But it's not the sidewalk along Pond Street, so to speak.
It's within the park. Okay. There are trees between the street and the walkway.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Further questions? Councilor Wallace, did you want to make an amendment?
No, not at this time.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to approve, so without further questions, roll call.
Motion to approve Order 342. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel? Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Next up is a motion to approve transfer of 00123 fire foam equipment, fire new hose, and fire protective clothing to fire software, total $8,100.
Second?
Thank you. So just to give you the kind of the sense here, what's going on, this is the new software that you heard a little bit about a couple mayor's updates ago. It is for the fire department, and it is primarily to be used in the truck on iPads to access things like maps, material safety data sheets, MSDSs as they're called, and also to be able to foster communication inside the department, but also when there are mutual aid calls, either for other communities coming into Newburyport to assist in a response or vice versa. The specific vendor that's been selected here is First Call. We did have Chief LeClaire, we did have firefighters Connor Clancy and Mike Kimura join the call to explain the need. Right now, they've expressed that there's really not a good way to enter data or gather data, incident management, when there is something on the ground that's occurring. There is no way really to gather information like the sprinkler connection locations. I mentioned the MSDS sheets and so forth. So this transfer in particular would be essentially to get the software set up, and for the purchase of 2 computers and 5 iPads. So that's what the $8,100 goes to today. And then with that money, they would go ahead and make those purchases, and that would equip the trucks and so forth. One of the most important things to know is that that's not the end of it. This is a subscription-based software, so if this is approved and if we move forward with it, we would expect to see a budgetary impact in the budget that's likely to be submitted or will be submitted in the coming weeks. And the estimated annual operating cost of this software going forward is about $20,000 per year. And so with the 20 grand per year, that's what funds a subscription. And then, whenever the computers and iPads reach end of life, then they need to be replaced. So we explored that in committee. The chief and the mayor were very upfront that is what's happening here. So we want to be aware that, and this is not unlike the body cams we saw with the police. We funded the purchase of them, and then we saw an ongoing subscription to handle the ongoing thing. So essentially, that is the story. The vendor will provide training. In terms of other communities, this is popular in Essex County, so that's part of where that mutual aid comes in. So others are using it. Salisbury and Amesbury are in the process of doing it too. And I think I keep calling it First Call, but it might really be First Do. Yeah, I just looked at my notes here, so I apologize. In the end, the committee saw it and agreed with the need and brought it to you with a 3-0 recommendation to approve.
Okay. Any questions? Further discussion?
Just a quick question.
Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, if I may, to the President. The $20,000, that we're going to see that in the budget, I take it? Is that be a new line item, essentially? Thank you.
Did you get your answer?
I nodded sort of
Yes.
authoritatively,
Yes.
and it seemed to have worked.
You got head shakes.
I got a nod.
Okay. Further questions? All right. Motion on the floor is to approve. Roll call.
Approve transfer 123. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Last major piece of business is motion to receive and file communication 403 annual audit of the city's FY21 financial statements.
Second.
So this is an annual audit conducted by an external firm, as is required. Sort of to summarize it as best as possible, we did do well in the audit. They were able to issue that the statement that we have accurately presented the city's financials, and there are no material misstatements. They do often identify some recommendations that the auditor and typically treasurer and potentially departments tend to work on, but the overall sense is a clean bill of health, so that's positive. Finance Director Ethan Manning joined us to kind of go through some of the keys, and there are a number of them, but I'll just kind of highlight a couple. Really, I'd say the big story is the continued representation of the ongoing liability for pension and other obligations. You may recall about 5 years ago or so, GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board, which controls how these are presented, basically has asked or started to require by its standards that those OPEB liabilities, those long-term liabilities, be shown on the balance sheet. Prior, they hadn't been shown. They were a footnote. Well, as you might expect, and they allowed for a phase-in. So they didn't make you take all of those liabilities all at once. So think of this like having a mortgage. You didn't show it on your paperwork for a while. Now you have to. If you were to do that all at once, it'd be like kind of troublesome, so they let you phase it in over 5 years, and this is actually the last of those 5 years. So now we have finally absorbed all of those things onto the balance sheet, and the result was we swung from a positive net position of $381,000 to a negative net position of $2.6 million. Net position represents your assets minus your liabilities, so without going too far into the weeds here. So we talked about this at length. You know, negative net position definitely makes you ask questions. We did talk about Director Manning. Long story short is certainly we're not alone, because all communities had to do this, and everybody had large liabilities that were sort of off book previously that had to come on book. We did talk about the good news is that swing was actually blunted a little bit by other increases and decreases in liabilities and other increases in assets. There was also another major change, which was actuarial changes are having a substantial effect. So in other words, anticipated lifetimes, how long do people live, because that goes into how long do you need to provide benefits and so forth for retirees. So in any event, if you had absent those offsets, the OPEB increase or in liabilities would have been $5 million. So instead it was blunted down to about 2.3 or so. Okay, so that's good. We did ask if credit agencies look at this. I know bond rating, you know, we talk about that from time to time. They do look at this, but again, since it's a broad spectrum change across a number of communities, we don't anticipate any major hits. On those actuarial changes, the last one, it has to be done every 2 years. So the last one was January 1, 21. So the next one will be January 1 of next year, 23. So you might expect more there. And we did discuss an interesting idea, which I guess other communities have considered, which is issuing a very large bond to essentially pay off those liabilities, and then taking that money and investing it in the meantime. And we talked about some of the risks and benefits of doing so. This is not being proposed. It just came up in discussion. So those are some of the major highlights. At that time, we had 2 committee members, so we had a vote of 2-0 in committee to recommend a receive and file.
Further discussion or questions? All right, motion on the floor is to receive and file. Roll call.
Communication 403. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
The last thing is just an update so you know what's coming up. So we are going to be meeting on Thursday for our regular scheduled meeting. We have a number of committee of the whole items I just want everybody to be aware of. So probably the most of interest will be the appropriations for design study at 59 Low Street. We're going to do that first, and we're going to start at 6 p.m. Everybody is in, so here's who's been invited and said they can make it. Director Andy Egmont from NYS will be present remotely, unfortunately, due to a kind of a conflict, but she's going to be able to make the call, which is great. We also have a representative from EGA, which is the administration's pick for the architectural firm. We were provided with some additional information on that process. Councilor Vogel had made some requests, so that's in your inbox. Just so you're aware, if anybody else wants me to invite anybody else, or you have any other information you wish, feel free to send it to me, and I will do my best. But we will plan to do that first, and it will probably be the bulk of our meeting. And that is committee of the whole, so everybody can speak and participate. Capital improvement plan is coming up, so I'm not going to talk about that. The schedule's out there. Brown School, we received 3 orders tonight, which are sort of part of a potential compromise on a matter that's in general government, so we will endeavor to try and take that up on Thursday if it's not too late. ARPA with Amesbury Interconnect, we're still waiting on the IMA, so I'm going to docket it, but it's not likely to move too much. And then finally, the Harbor Master Truck appropriation. So believe it or not, most of those 5 out of 7 are committee of the whole, so if people want to ask for anything on those. That's it for budget and finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zede. Education, Councilor Khan.
Yes, motion to remove Order 343 from Education Committee.
Second.
Councilor Khan.
Motion, what, do we need to vote on the removal? No.
Yep.
So motion to, thank you, okay. Motion to approve Order 343.
Wait, sorry, is that motion to approve and remove?
Well, I think it came out through the consent agenda.
No, this one I'm taking out of committee.
Yeah.
So it's the first time it's coming out.
But I mean, so it'd be a motion to remove and approve?
Sure, okay.
I'll
Since we like to streamline.
I'll second that.
Thanks for amending my motion.
Not that I don't love to hear my own voice, whatever.
So discussion?
Yes. Thank you, Council President. I think everyone, so you will see on your workspace here, Order 343, revised copy that's pretty much rewritten, and let me tell you a little bit why. There is a format, and in previous years, so just so folks know, the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, their grant and this statement of interest for the high school roof as well as the science labs. This is actually the third time that we are looking to get this supported by the state and the MSBA. So there is a specific format and language that you need to abide by to get that approval from the City Council. And so that's really all that the changes that you see here reflect that. And for those who have been on the council during those other 2 times of approval, this follows that same format. And in fact, it is the same from what we've had last year, for sure. So not much change, but we did meet before the City Council meeting tonight at 6:15, and we also had in attendance Superintendent Gallagher, Principal Wolf, Facilities Manager for the school, Steve Burgholm, and then we also had school committee member Sarah Hall in attendance. The discussion focused mainly around the what were the changes, if there were any additional significant changes. Also, we went through a little bit of the process. So what does it take? This is now, as I mentioned, our 3rd time. Last year was probably we got further than we did the first year. The first year, it was denied. The second year, they actually had a small committee come up to Newburyport and walk through the site. It was looking promising in fall of last year. However, at the end, we found out in late December that it was not accepted. Now, it seems promising that there is a good chance that by submitting it again, this can actually move up farther. We always knew that the age of the roof, which wasn't quite at 20 years when it was first put out there, that was one of the things mentioned early days, is that they really look at the age of the systems and they try to balance it against all the needs across the state for grant money. Other highlights, though, that we talked about is the process in terms of if the eligibility or if the project gets accepted. And I think that was an important conversation because the likelihood is that this could progress. And I think as a council, there's a few things we need to be cognizant of. One is I first point to the language of the order where the last paragraph says that we acknowledge by submitting this statement of interest form that we're not, that the MSBA is not guaranteeing acceptance, but we also are not yet committing funds that we're going to actually pay for this. That actually comes in the next, what they call the first module, which is the eligibility period. So when they come and say, okay, Newburyport, we are going to accept your statement of interest, they will come here and there's a series of steps that they will initiate. And that it takes a total of 270 days for that first eligibility period to go through. So it's about 9 months. And they actually form some school building committee. They have an educational profile questionnaire, which is the one I found the most interesting, because there's been conversations that in 3 years or the past 4 years, how relevant are the science labs? You know, at one time they may have seemed to be the direction to go in, but what if that pivots to other needs that the school might find? So this educational profile questionnaire does take a look at curriculum, it looks at enrollment, it looks at the ratios of educators to students. So there is a very vetted process to ensure the project that they're undertaking makes sense, and they will provide some recommendations. At the end of that it's called the Community Authorization and Funding for the Feasibility Study. That feasibility study then is when the next time we will be approached for money. And that's when really it comes to the discussion of, do we want to move forward? In talking about money, for example, this project is looking like it will be a total of $15 million, but possibly $20 million. We don't know how costs have gone up, but so folks know half of it gets kind of kicked in by the state, the other half we have to pay. The feasibility study, the facilities director, Steve Burgholm, was sharing that it might be around $250,000. These are rough numbers, but just to give an idea of how much the feasibility study would cost. And if that is indeed the route that we want to go through after those presentations, it's really at that phase that the city council then will enter this dialogue more, I guess, in more detail. And after that, after the feasibility study process, it's really, I think that's acceptance, and we start going through the next modules. So I know that's a lot of information, but I do want to point out that we do have, behind me, we have, if anyone has questions, because I know we are a big ask here. There's an accelerated timeline. April 29th is the deadline to get the statement of interest in, which is why we kind of had to do some quick quick actions, but some quick moving actions to make it happen. So if folks have questions, I encourage you to please ask away. In attendance, we did have Councilor Z joined us, and in attendance was Councilor Donahue, myself, and we supported it out of our committee 2-0, and I welcome any questions folks might have. Thank you.
All right. Questions, anyone? Councilor Wright.
Just to give you a little bit of my experience, when I was on the school committee, this is when the progress switched from where it became a statement of interest rather than an application. And they changed the way you apply to make it less burdensome, because before you had to have the city council have already approved the funding source. And now they let you go a long way down the path before they come back to the council and ask for money. So that's a significant improvement in the process. And so as your project rises up the priority list, you can file multiple times, and hopefully you'll get accepted, but then you'll have time to come up with the funding sources, whether it's for that amount of money, I would expect it to be some kind of a debt exclusion, I would expect, or I don't think it'll be coming out of the general budget.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor Zaid.
Thank you. I just, the chair actually brought this up in committee, and I just kind of wanted to put my thoughts on the record. I think this whole thing, my recollection is it germinated out of a need to do a roof, and then sort of figured out, hey, there are other needs here too, and how do these projects work together? But I think, again, the chair mentioned, but I agree, is, we're getting on to like our fourth try, and if we don't get accepted, I think we're still looking at a roof that at best is troublesome, and at worst maybe in worse shape. I think facilities director Steve Bergholm described, him and his team are doing what they can to like patch it, and they're holding it sort of at bay, stable, let's call it. But those of us who are on the council recall that the roof was sort of on its last legs 4 years ago, so they're on their last legs, and we don't want to do that harm to the building. At the same time, it's a real catch-22. This project would make sense to do because it goes right on top of where this roof is that we would do. So I understand the conundrum, but I do think that I guess the bottom line is if we don't get in this year, we have a real question about what do we do next. If we do get in, we have a real question about how do you find $7 to $10 to $12 million, because the cost escalation is a big concern. And I just want to echo the other at-large councilor that, most likely you're talking about a debt exclusion. Just simply objectively, it's very difficult to imagine how you could possibly fund this out of the operating budget.
Sure.
So voters and residents should know that that's the path we're putting ourselves on. So I'm going to support it. I thought that they presented the need, and again, it's not a new need, it's one that's been discussed. But next year, one way or the other, we're having a difficult conversation with a big checkbook, or maybe having to take another path to get that roof done. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Councilor McCauley.
Thank you, Council President. I too will support the submission tonight. I do believe that everyone has put together the appropriate actions to make the recommendation. And so, that's the first part. But the second part, I want to elaborate a little bit more as to what my colleague was starting down the path of. I think we want to prepare ourselves for, let's say we get this, and we get a $10 million award. Well, we're still on the hook for $10 million. And that's a big number. That's a big number in our budget. It's a big number in our funding budget. And what I'd really ask is that we start, and I don't know if this has been thought of, is we start, assuming we don't, we're not a priority this year from the building committee, is what is our plan B? Because the roof needs to be fixed. The science labs may or may not happen fiscally the way it works. But every year that we delay is more Mr. Fix-It on the roof. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse, right? So I'd urge us to put a stake in the ground that says, if it's not this year, if we don't get it this year, we don't have to make this decision soon, then I think next fiscal year we should address the roof, period, and try to make that going forward. But that's a rhetorical to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further comments or questions? All right, motion on the floor is to approve Order 343. Roll call.
Remove and approve. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Anything else, Councilor Khan?
No, that's all. We are still meeting May 3rd, so just to remind people, there are aspects of the budget season that's kind of coming to play with the school education committee. And so regular time will be at the senior center in person next week, Tuesday, May 3rd. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Khan. So in general government, we already have Communication 404 out, so I would make a motion to receive and file Communication 404.
Second.
Just so everyone appreciates, this is the law, the opinion that KP Law gave us regarding the Kelly School disposition and votes required for removing. For the Kelly School was 8 votes, and then any of the funds that we want to allocate now would be 6 votes. We had a spirited discussion about it, but in the end, we accepted Mark Rich's opinion, and we voted to receive and file this item 3-0 out of committee. No further questions or comments. We can take a roll call vote.
Roll call on receiving and file Communication 404. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
No.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. Yes. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no. Thank you.
So I'm going to go for the hat trick here. On Order 319, I'd like to remove it from committee. I would like to make it committee of the whole, and then I would like to put it back in committee.
Second.
This is the Kelly School Fund Order. We had this discussion in general government last week. This was the decision to keep it in committee and wait for the Budget and Finance Chair's orders that he brought in tonight. So that is my intent, is to make it committee of the whole, and we're going to meet next Monday.
Was that a second?
Second.
So does everyone understand what we're voting for? Making it committee of the whole and putting it back in. All right, if there's no further questions, roll call.
This is 319, motion to remove and then refer back to committee, general government, and committee of the whole. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
So just a reminder, we will be meeting the General Government Committee next Monday night at 6 o'clock to handle a lot of the committee of the wholes we have in the committee. So we'll have that posted by tomorrow. And that is it for general government. License and permits, Councilor Lane.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Lane. Neighborhood and City Services, Councilor Wallace.
Yes. Thank you, President. Motion to approve Ordinance 102, Chapter 17, Stormwater Management Revisions.
Second.
All right. The committee met a couple weeks ago to discuss what turned out to be minor revisions to the stormwater ordinance that was originally passed in 2010, I believe. This was the ordinance piece of the stormwater. There are also stormwater regulations that are written and able to be revised by DPS. So we were focusing on the ordinance portion, which is what the council will be voting on. So just in general, the stormwater ordinance covers a threshold of 10,000 square feet of disturbance Nothing has changed since it was originally passed. It also has to do with permitting for construction and post-construction type development. So basically there were some different parts to this. There was first the cleanup by Councilor Khan, who's a sponsor of this, in just cleaning up and formatting as she's been doing with the other ordinances. Cleanup by engineering, just cleaning up some of the definitions and whatnot. And then a few changes as required by EPA that oversees the permit for different municipalities. So the things, the policy implications here include just a clear definition of redevelopment, what redevelopment is in terms of what gets regulated. And it also requires any developments or redevelopments to use low impact development stormwater mitigation. So green type stormwater, like swales and rain gardens and that sort of thing. So that is now a requirement, not just a suggestion. The committee voted 3-0 to approve, and we should be on the line Nick Federico from engineering if there are any questions, but at this point I'll hand it over to the sponsor, Councilor Khan, to fill in anything I may have missed.
Councilor Khan.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Council President. Actually, I thought the chair did an excellent job kind of summarizing. The only thing I was just going to add is there are 6 kind of control measures, with these, the EPA permit, and in 2019, they made modifications. So some of this cleanup was also, had to do with just what was triggered from the 2019 kind of EPA permit. And one of the things is like enforcement, to be really specific on enforcement. And that's why you see that section being added here into the ordinance as well. But otherwise, I thought the chair did an excellent job. It was a good conversation, and we have the true stormwater gurus on the line if folks have questions. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I just have a question, and I'm not sure to whom I'm going to ask the question. But it says here that the regulations, that the DPS will create some regulations ongoing. I think it's consistent with everything we've done to have, a list of regulations and then have it referred, have the ordinance refer to the regulations that may change from now and then. Can anyone tell me where that list, what the status of the list of regulations are? Are we in process with that, or is anything like that?
Is that Nick?
Yes, if Nick is there, I think he would be the right person to ask.
All right, Nick, I think I've let you speak. There you go.
Hi, Councilor McCauley.
Hi.
The question with the rules and regulations, the ordinance, rules and regulations, and appendix of the rules and regulations were all updated at the same time and
are strictly to be in compliance with the MS4 requirements. And the DPS has the authorization to approve those. So we have copies of those if anyone wants to see it. The current set is on the engineering section of the website. But yeah, if you have any questions, you can direct them to the engineering department or DPS.
Nick, thank you very much for that update. I don't want to see, I'm not sure we want to see them. I just want to make sure that we've taken the steps that you've outlined, which is fantastic. Just the follow-up to that is, so would you anticipate that, let's say in a year or 2 years from now, if things change, that you would stay on top of that and update those regulations on your own, within the department themselves to make sure they stay current?
We would, and this is that. These were required in year 4 of the permit, which would have been 2021 fiscal year. So we are running behind on those. It was we were unaware of how long this process would take, but this is the only time we'd be updating those.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
Sure, just another follow-up to what they both said. This did come up in committee, and it's kind of an interesting situation because you have your ordinance, and then the ordinance can give authority to usually a board or a committee for regulations, but for DPS or for engineering or this type of thing, we don't have an official board. You know, it's not like we have a planning board or a conservation commission that makes regulations. So this was set up 10 years ago, and this is very standard that I had seen in many different communities. They just gave the authority to DPS. I know a year or two ago, when Councilor Eigerman and I were working on some driveway opening permit language, we actually also referred to some standard details, and that when engineering is ready, it has to be approved by the council by order. So it's not that we would have the technical ability to review all that, but it would just be kind of a acknowledgement that we know that these changed. That's not happening here, but maybe in the future it's something when we do have these kinds of things with DPS, we have kind of a standard procedure for that. But right now, I completely trust Nick and John Eric and Diane to follow along with the permit, you know, as it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Councilor Khan, and then Councilor Zede first, and then Councilor Khan.
No, Nico.
Thank you. I just I'm going to support this. I just wanted to say that my question through the committee was, what is the anticipated impact on residents as a practical matter? And my understanding, just so I'm putting it out there, the way I understand it is little or none, mostly. For this is, 10,000 square feet is large, so we're not talking about putting a pool in your backyard. That's not considered big enough to trigger this, but more of like developments or subdivisions would be the practical examples of what one would expect. I was also nervous reading it the first time about any implications for Plum Island, since there's mention, like for example, the addition of the word sediment, which didn't exist before, which makes my radar go up for Plum Island. But my understanding is that this is for larger projects. The trigger would primarily, I mean, you can never say never, but that this is really for like developers or, redoing a large area or doing a large project or commercial or even municipal project that's substantial. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Councilor Khan, and then Councilor Wallace.
Actually, I'll defer to the chair.
Okay, Councilor Wallace.
Yeah, just to answer that, yes, we did go over your questions during committee, so thank you for bringing that up.
No worries.
That is correct. It's not meant for single-family homes. The 10,000 square feet, that's land disturbance. So it might even, be 2, 3, 4 lots. I don't know. But there's also exemptions for pools and decks and all of that. So this is meant for multiple type developments or commercial developments, that kind of thing. So I think you're exactly right on your assumptions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Councilor Khan?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to respond. I think the councilor from Ward 5 and also the combination of these amendments from DPS, the rules, regulations, and I do want to just recognize too the Stormwater Advisory Committee, which is kind of promulgated and defined here as well, being composed of the mayor, but also you have the DPS and Board of Health and I guess some other folks involved, some of the engineering team. So there is, and in fact this ordinance and these kind of updates was kind of vetted with them. So there is an entity, but they don't have the teeth or the power that, but they are definitely an advisory role. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
One last thing that I wanted to mention, just for your information, and actually a question that came up through Councilor Zede in the committee was about enforcement. And we asked engineering, have you actually enforced this? And they said, yes, a couple times. So the engineering department is actually given authority, they've got the tickets or whatever to go out and fine as needed. So, but it's usually something that they have direct evidence of. Like for example, dumping paint down a storm drain is a big no-no because that goes right into the river. So, I know there was a question about some of the criminal penalties and that sort of thing, but I think Councilor Khan and engineering department, they had it all worked out. So, but yes, they do enforce, and just thought that was kind of interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or discussion?
No.
Don't think.
Nick still has his hand up. I didn't know.
Nick, do you have a question or comment you want to make? Your hands? Okay. No worries. Okay. All right. Councilor Wright.
Just a quick comment. I think that the the evil of water infiltration is significantly higher from combined sewer overflows upriver than it is from anything that originates from Newburyport. So I'd like to have that on the record also.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Further comments? All right, so the motion on the floor is,
To approve first reading.
okay,
Ordinance 102.
roll call.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else out of Neighborhood and City Services, Councilor?
Nothing more to report, thank you.
All right. Planning and Development. Councilor Cameron.
Thank you, President. Motion to receive and file communication 382.
Second.
Thank you. So this was a communication, I think it was the first update from Global Oil back in January. It got referred to us, and we just simply hadn't had a chance to dispose of it. But now that events have superseded the letter, we're recommending 3-0 that we receive and file it.
Thank you, Councilor Cameron. Further comments? Councilor Zede.
I just wanted to say, I suggest that through the clerk maybe, we try, I drove by there today and it says under contract, so there's obviously a buyer that exists that's material now. And I just want to suggest that maybe in order to further our collective efforts that we've put into this thing, that we make some effort to communicate with that person or group or company, whatever it is, to try not to have any receding of the progress we've made. So I mean, it doesn't mean that because they buy it tomorrow, they'll be breaking ground on a property. There could be other implications. So maybe through the clerk, through the president, I make that suggestion, and with the Ward 2 councilor as well, to just, see who's out there and say, we'd love to keep the snow getting off the sidewalks and the things we've worked hard on. They did do a decent job, it seems like, smoothing out the thing. And if they want to take the sign down, that would probably would make the neighbors very happy. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you, so noted. Further conversation, discussion? All right. Roll call?
Receive and file communication 382. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron. Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the appointment 305 of Dan Mello to the Waterfront Trust.
Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So the committee met with Mr. Mello earlier tonight. He has been on the Waterfront Trust. This is the end of his 5-year term. He spoke with the mayor and indicated interest in being reappointed for a second term. These are 5-year terms, and there is a term limit, so this would be his final appointment if approved. So he's been here since 2009. Again, been on the Waterfront Trust for 1 term. Had been on the Parks Committee. Now he's on the Waterside Committee, working on dock leases for winter and summer. And he spoke to the 3 of us just about the progress that he feels that the Waterfront Trust has made, working well with the city and other entities down there. He learned a lot from Bill Harris, as I think we all have, and he's currently serving as secretary, and one of his ideas is to work to update the ease with which the public can get documents, particularly some of the older historic documents that relate to the Waterfront Trust. So talk again about partnerships with the commercial fishermen, fisherwomen, and tour boats, and looking forward to the dredging project and working on some of those type things. And you seem very enthusiastic, very experienced, and I think somebody that we would want to keep on there. So we approve that 3-0.
Thank you, Councilor Cameron. Further discussion, questions? Roll call.
Roll call on the appointment of Mello to the Waterfront Trust. Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. And President Shan.
Yes. Yes, Councilor Cameron.
So Planning and Development will be meeting tomorrow night, a hybrid meeting here at 6:30. Several items are also posted as Committee of the Whole. It will be a very interesting night, I'm sure. We'll be discussing the zoning amendment for the business park uses, short-term rental units, and there are two other relatively new items that are not Committee of the Whole, but you're always welcome to stay. The Friends of Plum Island Light, the agreement between the city and that group, and also the Blue Wave Solar Pilot negotiations. So we'll be here tomorrow night. See you
Thank you,
then.
Councilor Cameron. Public Safety, Councilor McCauley.
6:30.
Thank you, Council President. I'll ask for a little patience here. I'm going to ask that we remove, a motion to remove application 71.
Second.
I'd now like to make a motion collectively to approve 68, 69, 70, and 71.
Second.
Should vote on the removal
Right.
first.
Okay. Let's vote on the first one first, right?
Or roll it into your motion.
You want separate, or you want to do it as a committee to remove?
Can I do a multi-particle sentence like that? Okay.
That would be applauded.
Okay, so I will make a motion to remove and approve application 71 in addition to collectively approving application 68, 69, and 70.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Council President. We've got a number of applications coming in. Application 68 is Flag Day on the 11th. All of the paperwork, et cetera, is done. Worthwhile cause, multiple years. They're back really in person, and we all look forward to that. 69 is Pioneer League Tag Day. They're using that. They're getting back to that. They haven't done it in a while. They're getting back to that. They're using it as a fundraiser to help pay off cleaning up the park, et cetera, along the way. Springfest application 70 is with the Chamber of Commerce. It's their traditional art walk, but they're not going to do the traditional stuff that they did on State Street. They're actually going to take it down behind the firehouse and do it in the water. In conjunction with that, they're going to have a change of scenery, et cetera. They think it's going to bring a different dynamic to the fest itself. Maybe bring people down into the park to be able to get a picnic lunch, et cetera, along the way. Application 71 is what the mayor had referenced in his, is Nourishing the North Shore Walk for Hunger. The majority of that is going to be done along the rail trail, start from Riverwalk to Cashman, et cetera, along the way. Plus our Harbor Walk, we have a small piece of that, but we should nonetheless approve that. Thank you.
Questions? Discussion? All right, roll call.
On the motion to approve, remove and approve, Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
A motion to approve Order 339, an agreement authorizing an agreement between the city and the Daily News regarding a parking lot.
Second.
Thank you. The conversation here is that we're not authorizing the actual agreement. We're actually authorizing the clerk to continue discussions and negotiations and have the mayor appropriately sign that contract going forward. We think, as said in the packet, we think it's a win-win for both scenarios, for both sides here. The scenario is that it's an unused lot, an unattended asset. We think the consistency of the city's parking system, enforcement, notification, all of that would be of benefit to the community in whole. And we think that there's a benefit to the Daily News to actually be able to monetize this asset going forward. Thank you.
Councilor Zede.
So I don't know how I feel about this, and I just want to express my concerns and see. I don't have a strong Like, I don't like it to the point that I just want to vote no, and I don't know if I want to vote yes either. So first and foremost, the cost is a question for me. So I've been thinking about, okay, it's a 25 space lot, but then you're going to subtract 3 spaces off the bat because those are going to be designated for Daily News employees. That's what it states. And then we're going to give 13 permits to those employees. We think on average 8 of them will be in. So I'm sort of saying the 25 isn't really 25. During the weekdays, arguably, it's like minus 11, let's say, 8 to 11. Okay, so something like that. Let's just say it's 10. So that's like a 15 space lot. And then there will need to be some handicap spaces installed, I believe, in order to meet compliance there. And then depending on where the kiosk goes, hopefully that doesn't take a spot too, because sometimes you have to put it in the middle of a space and put bollards in front of it. So I guess my points of reference, having been around the parking system for a while, are the USPS lot, which I believe we pay $8,000 a year for. And that's probably the closest analog to this. It's a small lot. It's right up there. I believe it's around 15 to 17 spaces, if I could be wrong, memory serves. So that's one analog. And then the other one, interestingly, is we have the Riverside lot, which we pay the Waterfront Trust $70,000 a year to use as a flat fee. So I'm just looking at this and I'm saying $36,000 a year. Do we make our money on that? Yes, maybe, probably, depends. I mean, I think if you divide it out and you have to figure out occupancy in order to determine that, but it just does feel expensive relative to some of the other ones. I mean, I think, again, comparing to $8,000 a whole year versus $3,000 a month is difficult. So that's one concern I have. The second one is, I do think this feels like an indirect parklet cost, so I have to bring that up, is that, we essentially, in part, we hunger for more spaces because we are eliminating a lot of spaces. So this is a great location. That's a positive for this, and the parking clerk mentioned this to me, and I think it's a nice idea. I'm just wondering frankly, if we can do better than the $3,000 a month, that might be something that makes it more attractive. And then finally, we did have a resident email about creating a potential conflict of interest. And I have to admit, that didn't cross my mind, but it's a fair point. That said, I don't really know what to do with it. I mean, to the extent that they feel conflicted receiving a payment from the city, to the extent that we feel conflicted, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't know that there's any answer, but I thought it bear mention. So finally, I'll just close with a question. So what is the investment needed to make this lot functional? In order to open it and put a City of Newburyport sign in front of it, what do we need to put into it? Kiosk, striping, handicap spaces, and signage? 10 grand, 20 grand? Would that come out of the downtown paid parking fund? Do we have a sense of that? Would be my question.
I would defer all these to you, Clerk Jones.
Thank you. Our hope, well, unfortunately, we're losing a lot of spaces on the waterfront, like 150. And our hope is to move one kiosk from there. So there is some cost to pour a concrete pad. We won't put it in a parking space. We'll put it on the entrance where there's room now. Overall cost, signage, it would be, I would guess, 5, 6, 7,000 on the high side. The lot probably could use a little patch. Doesn't even need to be repainted. But there are some things we would like to do to it. In terms of lost revenue because of the permits, I don't know how to say this, but they are not there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and that's frankly when most of the money is made in parking. They will be there on occasion. They are not there. They don't publish on Tuesdays, so they're not there on Mondays, so they're on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And in and out. Most of this looks worse than it is. However, we have a 30-day unilateral notice of termination. If we looked at the numbers, which we look at all the time, as you know, and we can identify the income, profit, net profit, or God forbid, net loss, we'll know. And I think, frankly, it provides a tremendous opportunity to provide public parking where it's needed most. And
Can I just ask
Why
one
am I
quick,
doing it? More work. Well, I don't know why I'm doing it. I think it's the right thing to do to provide parking downtown.
just one quick
Councilor
follow-up? The permits that we would provide to them, would those be designed to only function in that lot? Would they be programmed that way?
True.
Okay, so they wouldn't be usable in the rest of the system? Okay, and this doesn't have a set rate, it is not setting a rate here.
It's
You
not
would
setting a rate.
envision just becoming part of the $1 or $1.50 TBD?
We would like $1.50 at a minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councilor Vogel?
Yes, thank you, Council President. So I have sort of a series of questions, if I may, directly. So we're losing the waterfront. And then the genesis of this is the parklets taking up the spaces on State Street. Is that a fair assessment?
Not really. I mean, I tried 2 years ago. I reached out to Richard Lodge when he was editor. He liked the idea. He sent it off to corporate, and it sort of died a slow death. We tried again. There's a new editor. And the next thing I knew, the director of operations contacted me and said, we love this. We hammered out the proposal such that it is, and we're going from there.
So there's still, if I'm not mistaken, is it true that there's always plenty of spaces in the parking garage?
Well, it depends on what time of year. Not always, for sure. You know, and we've sold a lot of permits and we stopped selling permits at one point.
So on the weekends, as we start to get into the season, does the garage fill up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's seasonal related and weather related.
Yep. And as far as this particular lot goes, is it configured in its best way? Have you looked at it to configure it to see if you can get any more?
Almost. There's a few minor changes we want to make.
To get to the 25?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so my concern was indeed that, you know, did we look at it and getting the most out of it? It seems expensive compared to the Hale Street lot.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you our numbers if you would like. We've done spreadsheets on it.
To see what the
There's
return will
assumptions
be.
to it.
Yeah.
You know, like most lots, you know, you can make money through the kiosk, and then you make money in tickets too. Say it, but it's the truth.
Right, truth. All right, I stood not sure exactly, and I'm not sure yet. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace, and then Councilor Cameron.
Thank you, President. In general, I do think this is a good idea. I mean, that's kind of a smart growth type of thing, is to share parking, you know, and not have these empty lots during certain parts of the day. So I do think it's a great idea. The finances, I will leave that up to anybody else who's interested. But I was interested by the email that we got from the resident about the conflict of interest or the perception of conflict of interest. So I don't know, I guess my question is, has this been reviewed by KP Law, or could they suggest something in the agreement, or I'm not sure, just to kind of cover all our bases? I'm not sure if there's a way to mitigate for the conflict of interest, you know, some sort of compromise.
I mean, my plan would be, once we work out the details of the agreement, KP has to sign off on it anyways, and I certainly would ask him that question. It hasn't really occurred to me, frankly, it hasn't bothered me, because they're professional. I mean, what would be the conflict that the editor would write something favorable about parking? Or about, meaning the editorial staff there, I respect enough to think that whether they are paying the city taxes or they're in an agreement with the city and we make a payment for something we're leasing from them, I mean, the appearance of a conflict might be there. Obviously is there if someone raised it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, I would just think it's, you know, if you're entering into a financial agreement other than taxes with the city, it could raise questions, that's all. I mean, you just want to be able to say, we've looked at it, we've covered all our legal bases, that kind of thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I see Councilor Cameron and then Councilor Donahue.
So, yeah, I'm going to vote to support this. I think a couple of things, you know, with all that was said by folks, you know, most of which I agree with, you know, at least bears discussion. It would come back to the council to vote on the contract, I believe it says.
No.
That wasn't the intent, actually,
Maybe
because
I misread that wrong.
I think the intent is to authorize the clerk who'd work with the executive branch
okay.
to hammer out, and then, because I don't have the authority to sign the contract. The mayor is the contracting agent, right?
Point of order, last bullet does say subject to contract needs to be approved by city
city
council.
council,
Yeah,
yeah.
page 2 of 2.
The very last.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's misleading. That was my proposal to the Daily News, and I wanted to make them aware that I couldn't make the deal. I need to have the proposal approved. Maybe that should say proposal.
So that makes me a little less likely to vote for this, but I'll say the other things. I believe you said, and now I'm going to double check, that there'd be a 30-day, either party can cancel this.
Yeah, that's in there.
You said it would be run by KP Law in terms of the contracting. Yeah, sort of the point, yeah, I'd not thought of a conflict of interest. The Daily News is always going to use the city as an occasional punching bag. I think we just got to get used to that, and that's fine, and that's the way it should be. I don't think they would hold back. I don't think, I can't see, if somebody raised it, then I guess there is a perception of potential conflict of interest, but I don't think that's a reason for us to not enter into it. But what does make me interested, again, the 30-day unilateral notice of termination. I mean, when we were talking about the garage, which I know we don't really want to talk about anymore, at least I don't, that was discussed as a site many years ago, the city perhaps purchasing that building. I mean, there were other sites as well, but that end of town doesn't, is kind of lacking in parking. I know we have Waterfront East, but I have occasion to go through that parking lot quite a bit, and you will get people from Abraham's kind of sneaking in there on a Sunday morning and then getting out quickly. I don't know if they even really tow in there, but it's super underutilized. And to Councilor Wallace's point, that it's a good spot. So but again, looking at the money, I'd love to see the revenue versus the cost, because that is a big jump compared to some of the other deals that you've arranged. But I will support this.
Thank you, Councilor Cannon. Councilor Donahue had her hand up, and then Councilor Khan, and then back to Councilor Zaid.
Thank you, President. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on this. I do want to agree with the Ward 4 Councilor Wallace, sorry, that this is a good piece of smart growth sort of forward-thinking usage of an underutilized parking area. I would also like to speak to the, the perceived conflict of interest letter that we did all receive. While there is some legitimacy to that concern, I think that it's a very big what if. Being as small as the city as we are, and as small as a paper as the Daily News is, and I don't foresee it actually ever really coming up to be a conflict of interest. I think it's just it's a very plausible what if, but I don't think it's one that's ever going to come into play here in our little town with our one newspaper. So I yield. Thank you. And I am going to vote to support this. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Khan, and then Councilor Zaid.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Council President. Most of my questions are around the contract, actually. So how long are we anticipating? 3-5 years? I was trying to see. So 2 year. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, if that's a question, I originally was hoping for 3 or longer, and they reduced it to 2 after they thought about it at their corporate headquarters.
Okay.
Which is fine.
So I think...
Then there hopefully would be a renewal.
Okay, and I think part of that goes into the investment, since there is some element of investing to get this suitable, and then how long do we anticipate that contract to be renewed, or how are we going to gauge it and see the impact? We are assuming because it's underutilized and maybe people, patrons might sneak in there, park, and then visit the other shops there. Not understanding the traffic implications too, which might have some bearing on that Liberty, the one way of that Liberty Street structure. But in general, I think what I would feel more comfortable, because the way it is right now, I don't think I'm going to support this. And I'll tell you why. I think there's, just to me, not enough of a context to understand that, yes, we verbally are talking about the factors that have led to seeking additional spots, and this is a viable opportunity. But I do think we've seen projections, we've seen numbers before, we've been able to kind of do some cost estimators that have, I found very useful, and I know you've presented them before. So I would anticipate that being some additional piece here that would be, for me, more helpful to kind of come around that. But I know I'm just one vote here, but I just wanted to share that the way it currently is structured, and I'm sorry for not attending the meeting on this. I was not able to, but it's just not sitting well with me right now, so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Councilor Zaid.
So just mechanically, I just want to say that, so, you know, I would expect more votes to come to the council, even though we're not getting the contract, because you're going to need potentially things like a transfer in order to invest the $7,500, right? Unless it can come out of the existing parking budget, which was passed as part of FY, that would be one example. Second would be, I would suggest that, you know, probably the lot needs to be ingested into our inventory and a fee set. You know, we have a list and we say, these are the lots we have. So that would need to be handled as well. And there may be some, and then in terms of budget, I would expect to see 30, you know, 3,000 a year, 3,000 a month, so 36 go into the parking budget, because that's how we do it now. We have the parking department, as we call it, and then the revenue is general fund revenue. So you're going to see it pop up. So this wouldn't, you can't avoid the rest of the conversation. The mayor would have the authority to sign, because it's a 2-year deal with a 2-year renewal, so it doesn't break the 3-year thing. It, you know, in fact, arguably wouldn't have had to have brought it by law anyways to us in this, but that there are these other implications, I get it. So with all that said, I just was thinking through how is this actually going to come into effect, and setting the rate and so forth that would need to be done properly, in my opinion. I'm not going to support it either, but here's why. I just can't get over the deal. I need a better deal. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Again, I just was reading again, and I'm like, all right, so at the bottom too, it says there'll be courtesy digital permits also to the general manager, publisher, common maintenance, director of operations. I hope that's one person, but I don't know. But I'm just saying, you know, 25 minus 8 minus 3 minus another couple. So I think that there is a deal here, but I think that maybe for me anyways, this isn't the one. It'd be nice to see if they'd have some flexibility to bring it more in line with some of the cost we see from other ones. One way to do it is you could probably easily sustain the 3K in season. And you probably can't sustain the 3K out of season, which is a very clear way that maybe would feel more equitable and fair to both parties. Is, you know, you get 4 to 5 months a year where, okay, yeah, you can sustain that. And then in the I mean, we do that too. We might lower our rates in the winter. So I think something like that could make this a little bit better. But I do want to say on the record that I do understand and I do agree that this side of town, that side with the east lot, struggles at times because there's just more inventory on the western side. So I'm not opposed to the idea. I just think the deal needs a little bit of help, and I hope by sending that message, I'm helping for maybe create an environment that can produce something
Clerk
better.
Jones, and then I'm going to have Councilor Lane, Willing,
Just a couple of quick points. I'm not married to any deal. I mean, it's just, frankly, it's more work. I just thought it was a great idea and a great location. And I'm not married to running off and doing a deal on my own. I have everything to lose. If you would like to review and approve the contract, you could certainly make it subject to that. I'd come running right back. And if you'd like to make it approved subject to seeing my spreadsheet, which I don't know if I actually
We spoke about it in committee.
In committee.
Your paybacks were short. Your paybacks were short. Your assumptions were there, and all
Yes,
that.
and we looked.
Occupancy and so forth.
Yeah, we looked at all that as we do, and we have a good idea and a good feel for it because we've been managing lots for years as to what their occupancy is. It's a dream lot, that's all I can tell you. It probably would be our most utilized lot. That would be my guess, even more so than Green Street on a percentage basis. But again, it's what else can I say? I had another thought that I caught it from Councilor Donahue. What was it, Councilor Donahue? Yeah, just that The other thought, and maybe it's irrelevant, maybe it isn't, there was a private operator that gave them an offer for $3,000, but frankly, they said, we would love to work with the city. Because if you think about our system, it's already set up. We have a fixed cost. We have officers, we have a back end, we have an LPR car, 2 cars. They're all fixed costs. So if you spread it over more spaces, brings your cost per space down. I sound like a businessman, don't I?
I'd like to give Councilor Lane an opportunity. Councilor Lane?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm going to support this and primarily because of what the clerk just said. It doesn't seem, I don't want to kill this the way it is. I mean, I think the terms can be worked on after the fact and then come back with a cleaner copy. My question, I guess, is can we, was the sale of that building brought up at all, or were they indicating that they wanted to sell at some point? And if so, can we do like a right of first refusal on that?
Thank you. Councilor Lane, it was not brought up, not discussed, and frankly, not even considered. The sale of that building, if and when they sell it, would be a totally private transaction.
Yeah, I just, in terms of the lease, how it's written into the lease, that sometimes I've seen them, I mean, I assume this would be a lease. I know we keep referring to the contract, which is one and the same, but if that's a provision of that lease, I think that makes it a lot more attractive. But I mean, I'm in support of it. I'm going to go to you. You're the expert in the field, so you think it's a.
I'm sure they're not concerned about it. If and when they wanted to sell their building or whatever happens, they've got that. It's just not an issue for them, I'm thinking. And for us, I don't think we're in the business of buying buildings right now.
So it was Councilor Khan, Councilor Vogel, and then Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So there is a spreadsheet, is what I'm hearing, and I'm wondering if that could be circulated to all of the councilors. I think that'd be really helpful. The second piece is I'm wondering if I could at least entertain adding a motion to look at the contract. I do think that this is, and I'm not sure how the Hale Street, now that these other locations, how was that handled, those contracts? Because I don't believe I was on the council when those were kind of in the same type of arrangement. So if there is some appetite, I think, for the council, but I don't know, again, the urgency too. I was going to suggest if a little bit more information, and my apologies again, not going to the committee meeting. So if we want to vote and deal with this, we can. But I was just going to offer.
If I could speak to that, I think there is a sense, I wouldn't call it urgency. So we came to a meeting of the minds a couple of weeks ago, and and a lot of people are not used to our world. And so I said, before we do anything, I have to bring it to the council. They have to refer it to committee, has to come out of committee, has to be approved. It's going to take 2 to 4 weeks. And, they're not used to that, but they're okay with that. So to push it off another 2 weeks would probably make them a little nervous. Okay. And again, there's someone else out there that would love it. So if it could be done tonight, it would be great, I think. At least a vote to go forward with conditions. I'm fine with those.
All right, so Councilor Vogel, McCauley, Zaid.
Thank you. So same concerns. I do believe that you have an understanding of the parking system and what this will generate. It is curious, the idea of split season rate is of interest as well, but perhaps it carries itself through the year. Anything creative about like shorter term spaces so that there's more turnover? Are they going to be hour long?
Yeah, our thoughts on that right now is to make it a rollover lot, if you will. Not an employee lot where they would sit all day. And you would charge people as they come in. Our thought also is to honor residential permits. So much like if you had a permit, you could go park in Green Street, but only for 3 hours, not sit there all day. Much like that, whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours.
Yeah, I think a shorter term is better than longer
Yeah.
term.
The idea is, if you make money on a rollover lot.
Right.
But it's a lot that we want people to be able to drive down Liberty Street, and let's say they want to go to a restaurant. They can pull in and park and go to a restaurant. They don't mind paying at the kiosk. It's sort of like, have you ever been to Portsmouth? God, you're just so happy to find a space. You don't care because
Right.
you're going out to eat.
So the other question that I had, or concern, well, is the Abraham Bagels on Saturday and Sunday mornings. I mean, you could, in terms of, writing tickets, you could stand there and go boom, 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 boom.
Again, I've gone there myself, but there's a lot of permit holders that go there. They'll love it. They can pull, I would like it, pull right in and park.
Yeah.
Pay for what you need.
I would like to, well, if we're a permit holder, we don't pay anything.
You don't need to
I'll support this. I'm hesitant, but I'll support it, but I really like to see the deal. That would be my, yeah. I don't know if you want an amendment for that to kind of get that deal back to us before it goes to the administration, or how that works.
I guess I'm in the business of arguing against myself. If the motion was to, subject to the final contract being brought back in with...
now you're 2 weeks out.
Yeah, but at least they know that the city in general supports the proposal, which means a lot. Because I did ask if we could have a final contract, and they said, no, we just want to see what the proposal, if the proposal is approved, and then we'll reduce it to writing.
I'm not going to make that motion, but I'll listen to it.
Councilor McCauley?
Yeah, thank you. So, we had a very lonely committee meeting. There was just Councilor Wright and myself who were in attendance here. And we did ask a lot of these questions, so I'm glad that we prepared the clerk to be able to answer them. We did go through, we did talk about the financials, although we didn't share the spreadsheet. We talked about a short return on investment in a shorter window. The 2 years was more than enough for us to make our money back on that. I would welcome the clerk to circulate on email the spreadsheet that you're using as reference. I do think that that's a different type of lot. And again, we talked about this. It's a different type of lot. It is a turnover lot. It would be, and it could be a very active lot, which that's how you drive money in terms of vacancies. You don't make money where people park there all day and they never move, right? So this turnover would generate a lot of type of income going forward. That's the risk. That's the reward that we think can happen in that. The ask here, and it did come from the committee 2-0, but the ask here was to empower the clerk to be able to go forward, to be able to negotiate. And I think that our recommendations to him about maybe a shorter term or different dollar amounts or things like that are all valid, but I still think that we should leave here tonight empowering the clerk to be able to move forward with the negotiation. If we want to see the additional contract, then we are, asking for additional time to be able to review that. It's fine, but let's remember, KP Law is going to review it. The administration, because it's under 3 years, doesn't really need us. And to answer the question, some of these parking contracts never came before the council because they were just signed by the mayor under her purview at that particular time, and keeping the contracts the way they were, certain time frames and things like that along the way. So I do think this is an era of transparency in trying to move forward with this. Not because I'm the chair of the committee and we voted 2-0, but I would vote tonight to empower the clerk to continue the discussions with the Daily News, which is in there, as subject to anything that we'd like to make forward. But let's just understand, we want to be up and running by Memorial Day, right? And that's going to take some lead time. That's going to take, we want to capture the essence of the season. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Councilor Zaid.
Oh, I just was going to add the history. Hales Court came in because it was 5 or 10 years. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was longer. So that full contract did come in because of that.
Thank you.
Councilor Wright.
Yeah, so we did recommend approval 2-0. I think there's a lot to be said about economies of scale. We've created a system that has a lot of capacity, and all we need to do is provide more spaces. The sunk cost into the system is already there, so every space you add is an incremental revenue source. True. And so that in and of itself will help to offset any concerns about the price per month.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Further discussions or conversation? All right, there's a motion on the floor.
Is the motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Sheehan?
Yes.
10 yes, 1 no. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Anything else out of public safety?
No, Council President, I have nothing else, nothing further.
All right, public utilities,
Nothing tonight.
rules,
Nothing tonight.
good of the order. I do have one item for good of the order. One of our favorite chairs, Chair Sontag, sent me a message about an open house at Congregation Ahavas Akim. They are 125 years old this year. And on May 15th, Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6, they will have a guided tour of their historic building on Washington and Olive Street. It was built in 1865, and it started as a Jewish community place in 1896. So good opportunity for folks to see a historic building in our community. And also they will be having reflections on their 125 years on Sunday, June 12th at 4 p.m. It'll be moderated by Anna Schmalowitz, person who is chronicling the Jewish life in Newburyport for decades. So I encourage folks to attend both events if they have the opportunity. Anything else for good of the order? All right. Clerk Jones.
So next on the agenda would be going into executive order, if I can read it, pursuant to 30A, Section 21 et al., exemption number 6 of the open meeting law. This discussion will relate to the purchase, exchange, lease of value of real property if the chair declared that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. The locus is Coffin Street. Does the president wish to make that declaration?
Yes.
So declared. Then we would need to announce whether we're coming out once we go in.
I think we're going to announce that we're not coming back out.
Okay. So, and then we would need a roll call to go into executive session.
Prior to that, I would just like to recuse myself from this topic.
Thank you,
There's
Councilor
a
Wright.
conflict of interest.
Noted.
So motion to go into executive session, do we, is that?
Yeah, actually, we need a motion.
Yeah, so motion to move into executive session.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion to go into executive session, first and seconded. Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright is recused. Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
So we'll address that in a second, but Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
No. And Councilor Sheehan?
Yes.
So we are in executive session, 1 recused, 1 no, and 1 remote, which I have to think about for a minute.